Welcome to the first mini tour of our new home here at Turner Farm. This is a project that we've been pouring our hearts into for the last several years, and although it's not yet finished, we're so proud and excited to share it with all of you. Our family has been dreaming about every tiny detail of this house for so long, and we are looking forward to answering all the questions that you have about different aspects of our build. We're really excited to start sharing more of our home and our life here on the farm, so we hope that you'll stick around, subscribe to our channel, and ask us anything that you'd like to know. So welcome to our brand new house. This is the very first time that I'm filming here. I'm really excited about it. It's still very much under construction. It's not done yet, but you guys had so many questions when I did the Q&A on our Instagram. You had lots of questions about the house, and I really want to answer all of them for you. And I just think that this is kind of the best way to do it so that I can really show you different aspects of the house. I was going to try to wait until it was finished, but it's not yet. And I just want to answer all the questions that you guys had. So we're going to get started. I'll kind of read off the questions that you had. I'll answer them. I'll show you different parts of the house, and it's going to be lots of fun. So thanks for being here. Okay, so I'm standing here in the kitchen. As you can see, it's still very much under construction. We still have a few things that need to happen in here. For example, this back wall is going to get a coat of paint and some plaster on the hood vent. But a lot of people were wondering why we went with wood countertops. Island is a reclaimed piece. We extracted, well, we didn't do it, but we had wood extracted from an old dairy parlor that was being torn down. And then we had this beautiful island built out of the wood that came out of there. And then these are red oak countertops. So I really wrestled with whether or not to use wood for the counters, and here's why I did it. I actually find this much nicer to bake on, and that's ultimately what I do a lot of. So we probably won't be kneading dough and doing things like that on the actual island itself, just because there are kind of divots and holes in the island that I don't really want food to kind of get stuck in. So this surface over here, and I'll show you our butcher block, those are the surfaces that we're going to be really making our bread dough with, or any dough that we're making any baked goods with. We're going to be making it here and in the pantry. And so I don't really love making dough on stone. I find that it's really hard when I'm using my pottery bowls. They like kind of clank on it, and I always feel like they're gonna crack. I feel like it's really hard and it's cold. It's much easier to keep a sourdough starter active and happy on wood. You'll often find people who have stone countertops will do like a block of wood that they keep their sourdough starter on. That's because wood is so cold. It's really hard to keep your sourdough active and strong putting it on stone every day, especially in the wintertime. So wood is just a really nice and neutral kind of temperature for things like sourdough, and I just find it a lot nicer to bake on than stone. And so when I was planning out our kitchen, so much of our counter space is along this wall here, and if I used stone, then it wouldn't work as well for baking. I would have to take the dough somewhere else to work it, and that's just not something I really wanted to do. So that's why we did wood. This works really well for us and what we need in our family. I have little interest in using stone for the countertops for that reason, but maybe down the road we may change it up, and it's an easy thing to do if we decide to change it. We don't have to change the whole kitchen, we can just change the countertops. The place we did choose to do some stone is right here behind the sink and underneath the faucet. We did the same thing in the pantry. So what we did is we had our oak countertops built, please excuse the mess, to come here and wrap around the sink and then stop, and this will be siliconed. And then same thing on the other side, it will come here and stop. And the reason that I did that is because I know all too well that when you're doing dishes, it tends to splash and get lots of water here, and I just really didn't want the counters to start turning black or rotting. And even though we've sealed the wood very well, underneath here is siliconed, it just can still happen. And so what we did was we had a local company called Livingstone do us up a slab of stone to go right underneath, and they did all the holes for us and cut it exactly to what size we needed, and then we installed it And, you know, if we ever want to change out our faucet, all we have to do is lift up this piece of stone and switch it out with a new piece of stone. And it's just nice and easy. So we did this here, and we also did it in the pantry. I'll show you the one in the pantry. And then we just have to treat all the wood in behind. This all needs to be stained and treated. And I just think that this will work really nicely for us. Still very much under construction in the pantry. I will do a full home tour once we are moved in and everything is set up, but you can see here that we have finished silicone. We've done the silicone all around there and all around the back, and this will have like a wood backsplash as well. And it's just a nice, easy slab that can get nice and wet if it needs to. So, and then we have a silicone strip underneath here too. And we did the same red oak countertops in the pantry. So a lot of people were wondering what the pros and cons are for using wood countertops. So I've kind of told you my benefits to using countertops that are wood. The cons would be that depending on how you choose to finish them, they can be a little bit more of an upkeep. So what we chose to do is we used a water-based seal on it. Any water-based, once it's cured, so meaning once it's dried for at least 48 hours, then you can have food come in contact with it. The difference is you can't cut on it. So I can easily knead bread on this. I can prepare food on this. It's completely safe to have food touch it as a water-based sealant once it's cured. But you can't cut into it because then that breaks that seal. So if we were gonna use this as like a wood butcher block style, so if we wanted to cut on this, because it is a hardwood, so we absolutely could have done that, you would use an oil. So you would do like a cutting board oil and you would finish it like that. The only problem with that is if you're using a cutting board oil, you're gonna have to probably re-oil it quite frequently, depending on how often you're using it. And some parts will get more worn out than others. We chose not to do that because typically when you use an oil on a wood, especially like a red oak, it's gonna make it turn a little more yellow. And I know that the sun's shining right on this right now, so it may look a little bit more yellow, but truly in person, this is a beautiful color, and it kind of maintained that nice, rich, like tan brown color rather than turning yellow or orange, which will tend to happen if you're using if you're using oil on the wood. So that is just something to keep in mind. Those are really the only cons that I can think of for a wood counter. I personally love wood. I also love cutting on wood, and I'll explain that a little more when we talk about the butcher block, but I love it for everything. And if you properly seal it with the right thing, then you can prepare food on it with no problems, and it's really easy to upkeep. Okay, so let's talk about the butcher block. This is what we are going to use to cut everything on. So we decided to keep that space over there as like a food prep. We can use it for preparing food and anything like that, but we didn't want it to have knife marks in it. We wanted to maintain that nice, beautiful surface. So we used a water-based sealant rather than oil. This is going to get an oil. You can use a cutting board oil. It usually is a beeswax base, but you can get a whole bunch of different ones. And then for cleaning, we're just going to be using like a nice gentle soap or a salt scrub. So you can use hot water and just scrub the top. So once we sand this down and put some oil on it, then we are good to go. This is antimicrobial, so it's not gonna harbor bacteria. Same if we were going to use our oak countertop over here. It is a hardwood. If we chose to cut on it, it is antimicrobial. It is safe. This is one of the safest surfaces that you can use to cut anything that you want on it. And so I love the patina of it. I'm not someone that oils my butcher blocks very often, but depending on how you want them to look, you can oil them as much as you want, and you just give them a good scrub down with some hot water, salt, or a nice gentle soap. The other question that we get a lot of is what type of wood we have in our home and why we chose so much of it. I really wanted this to look like a cabin, and I just feel like the wood really lended itself to the vibe that I was going for in here, and it was just a personal preference. So we actually used a reclaimed wood over here on these walls. So these still need to be stained, but these are a reclaimed wood wall. And then all the beams that you see in here came from Nova Scotia. They were harvested in Nova Scotia. They are red pine. And then all the walls are also red pine. and they are stained with a 2-part stain. So we have one color underneath and then we did a darker on top to give us this kind of final feature color. And I'm just really happy with how it turned out. And we can always paint it down the road, but you can't stain over paint. So we decided to go with the stain, and I really love it for now, but it can always be changed. The floors that you see throughout the house actually were extracted from an 1800s homestead. They are, I believe, a pine, and what I'm told is the trees were so old when they were harvested that this is about 300-year-old pine on the floors. And you can really see kind of all the nail holes and the patina. And so when they came, they were quite rough, and we had them installed, and then we sanded them down ourselves and then just put a clear coat over top. And I'm really happy with how they turned out. This is the seal that we used for the floors. It is a gymnasium grade floor seal. And what we did was one coat, a sanding, and then another coat, and then like a slight buff, and then a third coat. We haven't done the third coat yet. So this is what this one looks like. So is the house drafty? This is what I've been asked a few times, and that was like a big one when we did the Q&A on Instagram, because the walls are all wood, but it's just like using drywall in your home. So basically the outside of the house was built. We have a whole layer of insulation that goes all the way up right to the roof. And then instead of doing drywall, we just did like a shiplap over top of the insulation. And so no, the house is very, very warm, very much warmer than the one that we're in now actually. And it has lots of really great insulation. So it's very much like a new home. We just built it to look old. These are not structural post and beam logs. They are aesthetic. They're just made to look like rafters. So I know that it kind of appears that this is like the actual external ceiling with the rafters, but those are aesthetic. And that was kind of like by design, we did it like that, but we were able to also do a full, what it's called is a hot roof. So we were able to build the insulation all the way up to the peak. So that is very nice and warm, and we don't have any drafts coming into the house. So early on, I've talked a lot about building a healthy home. So I'm gonna do a full YouTube on exactly what that looks like and everything that we did in this house to make it like a quote unquote healthy home. And why, when we first started building the house, we chose to, not build like a net zero home or like a super eco-friendly home, because certain aspects of eco-friendly homes and net zero homes tend not to be the healthiest for people. And especially a lot of them end up having solar panels on the roof, which are really, really not great for our health. And I will talk more about that in that particular YouTube. But I'm going to tell you the 3 main factors that contributed to our decision making when we were building this house to be healthier. And the first one was air quality. So we did specific things to our HVAC system, and then also bought specific air purifying units, which I'll show you and talk about, to make the air quality in the home really great. Because the thing is, new homes tend to be quite tucked in. And what I mean by that is like everything is kind of closed in, and the insulation is so great, and it's awesome because especially where we live, it's really cold here. So you want to keep that heat inside the house, but unfortunately sometimes that means that you are not getting the air quality that you need. So we did certain specific things to our HVAC system and also different air quality control systems in the house in order to make sure that we were breathing in the best quality air in the house. The second thing was water and the type of water that we're drinking. We are on a well. Typically when you're on a well, that is great water. It's not public water. A lot of public water ends up having PFOAs in the water, which are like forever chemicals. They tend to be extremely harmful for our health. They have, lots of the public waterways have fluoride in the water. They have heavy metals in the water. So we had our water specifically tested. And again, I'll go through all of that. We put different specific systems in place for our water that goes to our livestock in the barn, but then also feeds into our house. The reason that we did the entire system is because it's not just about what we're drinking from the tap, it also has to do with what's coming onto us when we're showering too. So we wanted the entire system to be for all the water that's used in the house, for all the pets, all of our animals, and then also what we shower with. So that was the second thing. And then the third biggest factor that we took into consideration were subchaotic frequencies, which is what we know in modern day as EMFs. That's when we come back to like solar panels on the roof. They are some of the highest subchaotic frequencies that you can kind of do in your home, and then you're trapped in this bubble of these frequencies, and most of us have Wi-Fi and all of that. So I worked with a very specific company that has actual testing done on, you know, they're not just blocking EMFs, because I don't believe in that. I believe that if you have EMFs and you're trying to block them, they have to go somewhere. And so I never really got on board with products like that. So again, I will talk all about this in the next YouTube when I talk about the healthy home. But the company that I found is called EMF-safe, and they have products that you clip on different devices in your home, and we are going to clip it on the actual meter. So we have like a unit that's going to go on the actual meter, and then all throughout the house. So any air purifiers that have fans, any rotors that have Wi-Fi, anything like that in the house, it's going to have this chip on it. And what their research has shown is that it just basically changes the subchaotic frequencies so that they are no longer subchaotic when they go into our systems. Because subchaotic frequencies, or EMFs, when they come into our bodies, it starts to clump together our red blood cells. It like coagulates your blood, and that's really bad. It can cause a whole host of illnesses that I'm obviously not going to get into, but you know, you guys can do your own research on that, but they can cause a lot of different diseases and problems. And so what they did was, their research was, they put blood in in these different chambers, and then they added their products in, and what they saw was that the blood didn't clump together anymore. And so it changes the frequencies that go into your body. So you can fix your whole entire house and still live normally with these products. So that's what we found. It was an investment, but something that I found was really important for us when we were building our house to have this. So we also hardwired our internet through the whole house, so we don't have to have Wi-Fi if we don't want to. Everything is hardwired so that we can plug into the wall and use the internet. But those are just the three main factors that we took into consideration when building a healthy home. I will walk through all of those products and more detail for you in another video, but I know that people were really interested in kind of like how we made our decisions in the house. You know, we did certain special smoke detectors because of the radiation that comes off of regular smoke detectors. You know, we did UV lights on our water and our HVAC and all of those sorts of things that I'll tell you all about. But those were the three factors that we took into consideration when we were building our house, and the three most important things that I felt needed extra money devoted to those things in order to make sure that when we are at home, it is our sanctuary and we are healthy in our home. Why did we put grills on our windows? Quite possibly the most asked question I have gotten since the beginning of this build. And I kind of answered it on Instagram one day. Please excuse how dirty these windows are. They're very dusty. But in short, I really like them. And this is what I wanted it to look like when I looked out my window. I find that it gives a more cabin feel. I find it's cozier. It's less modern. Modern is definitely not what we were going for in this house at all. We also opted to not do slanted windows because I wanted it to emulate an old school log cabin, and back then they didn't have slanted windows. So I tried very hard to depict the primitive sort of feel that I was going for in the house, and the windows really needed to depict that. So whether or not people feel that it obstructs views, or, you know, we almost did huge windows that come all the way down to the floor and no grills in them, and I found they were just too modern and they just did not depict the vibe and the feel that I was going for in this house. And I really love the windows, and I think they're beautiful, and they let in lots of light, and they really don't obstruct the view, I promise. So building in the PAX IKEA system into our closet. This is not done yet, so I'm gonna have to show you when it is. But basically what we did is we went on IKEA and we bought their PAX system. You can see that these are just the regular white drawers that come with their system. And then we had the trim built out. So the trim goes all the way up to the ceiling, and we had it built out, and then it will be painted. And so once it's done being painted, this will look built in. So essentially this is 2 units here, and then they just framed them, built them in, and then put faces on the drawers. You don't necessarily have to do faces on the drawers. You could just build it into the wall, but we had faces put on the drawers. These will all be painted to match the walls in here, and then they are just really nice, simple, with a soft close, and they look like a custom built-in piece, and this was a fraction of the price to have done. I highly recommend it. I think, in total, we used 4 units of the PAX, and then we just designed them however we wanted to, with drawers or with a place to hang things. We have some shelves up there for hats, and it just all kind of worked out. We don't have a giant closet or anything in here, but there's a ton of storage. Another decision we made specifically for building a healthy home, and that is avoiding kind of any mold in the shower. So we used extra large tiles, and we chose not to use small tiles on the floor. So these are the biggest tiles that we had in here, but we were going to use a penny tile on the floor. We opted out of that specifically because it is so common to have mold underneath your shower and not even know it, and that can just be really, really detrimental to your health. In our other bathrooms, we opted for smaller tile up top, but then we still did a nice large tile down the bottom instead of a penny tile. And even though we use the Schluter system underneath this, so it is technically all waterproof, again, it can still happen that you can get mold underneath your shower, and we really wanted to avoid as many cracks as we possibly could when building them out. The laundry room we have on the 2nd level, we did the Schluter system all underneath and up the wall. So it is fully waterproof in here. We put a drain in the middle of the floor. So if anything were to ever happen, like a flood, it would go down the drain and not into the walls and the floor system and ultimately our main level. So if you happen to put a laundry room on the 2nd floor, I highly suggest doing it like this. Another question was, how many bathrooms does this have? And we have 3. So here's the 3rd shower. We went with a green stacked subway style and the big tile on the bottom. So this is our guest bath downstairs. And then we have the 2 upstairs. So if people wanted to know what our light switches are, these are from Buster and Punch. They are really funky. They're unlacquered brass, so they will start to weather. So we have this style, and then we have some that have like a dimmer switch on them as well. We also have unlacquered brass on just like regular switches, because this is a 4-way, so it has 3 different spots where it can turn on, and the Buster and Punch doesn't actually have switches that you can use as a 4-way. So we had to have some like this. So we got these switch plates from Kyle Switch Plates. Again, you'll have to excuse the mess, but a lot of people wanted to know what our paint colors were. Throughout the entire house, anytime you see like a creamy white everywhere, it is called antique white. And then our countertops here is called Powell Buff by Benjamin Moore. It kind of looks green in the video right now, but it is actually like a beautiful kind of taupey yellow. It's hard to get an angle where you can tell what the color is because of the sun coming in, but it's called Powell Buff by Benjamin Moore. So yes, we do have a basement. It's quite a large area down here. So this will actually be a gym. Once we get some equipment, we're gonna put a gym down here. And this area here will be a rec room for the kids. And then over here is one of my favorite spots Food storage. So we have a whole room in here for just food storage, and these boxes will come out of here. But we have all this shelving area here in order to kind of store any food, and it wraps around behind the door. All of our bulk food will come in here, and then we'll have like fridges and freezers as well out in this main area. What kind of stove did I get? My stove is LaConche. It is not yet hooked up, but it is a propane stove on top, and then 2 full-size electric ovens. Why didn't we do a masonry fireplace? Mainly because of the size. So this fireplace still takes up quite a bit of space into the living room and dining room areas. And a masonry fireplace would have come out way further than this. But it did, however, give me the idea when I was looking at masonry fireplaces, because I absolutely love them and I think that they are great and practical. It gave me the idea, we have a very specific system that circulates our heat throughout piping in here, and then it circulates it in different vents, and then also up in our bedroom, which is similar to how a masonry kind of like cycles the air through. It also gave me the idea to put these storage benches here. So we wanted window benches, and we made them so that we could store wood underneath. So it kind of gives that big clunky, like beefed up fireplace in this smaller area of the living room that we had to fit it into. So ultimately it came down to space is why we didn't do a masonry fireplace. The reason that we didn't carry these benches all the way across, which was something that people had suggested, mainly because I don't think it would have looked right. I really like the look of this, but I will show you why. Over here we have a vent that is sitting right beside it, so it would have come over top of it. We wouldn't have been able to use this, this vent. This works as air conditioning in the summer as well as heat in the winter, so we really didn't want to cover that up. We could have technically moved it, but our couch comes to about here. And then on this side, you'll see that this is the dining room area. And while it might look like there's lots of space, it really isn't a ton of space. When you put the chairs and stuff in behind it, they would have run into this bench right here. And so we kind of kept it on this side of where the table's gonna go, and it worked really well for what we needed from it. Okay, so just some like quick questions. When are we moving in? That was a big question that people had. I really don't know. We're very close to the finish line, but there's just lots of different little things that still need to happen before we can come in to the house permanently. And I want to make sure that they're done before we move in. Otherwise, they probably won't get done once we settle into it. It is also the middle of the winter. We have a lot of snow. It is going to be tricky to move everything up here. So we're just kind of waiting for some nicer days as well. But once we get our electricians and plumbers sorted out, then we're hoping that we move in maybe sometime in March. That seems doable, hopefully. Another question that we got was, what are we heating the house with? So we actually have 2 units. We have a unit in the basement and a unit up in the attic, and they are heat pumps, but they're ducted. So we have a ducted one to the basement, and then also into the floor of the main level of the house, and that is on its own thermostat. And then upstairs we have a different one that is on another thermostat that will kind of service the upper level of the house. So they will be on different thermostats. So we're really happy with how that's gonna play out. So we have the ducted system throughout the house, and then really great insulation, so it should be nice and toasty. And then also we have the wood stove, which really the wood stove in and of itself would probably heat the entire house other than the basement. So we have 2 really great sources of heat, but where we live, we're not allowed to use wood heat as your main source of heat. You have to have a secondary heat. So we weren't, like, to code, we weren't allowed to use the wood stove as just a main source of heat, even though it would probably heat the whole house. I really liked and appreciated this question, and it was, how long have we been planning to move into this house? And I appreciated it because it's just been such a long road for us. We've been planning this for a really long time. So we moved actually onto the farm in our current house 7.5 years ago. And when we moved onto the farm, like we kind of thought that that was going to be where we would be forever. And then as we started farming and as we started buying this land, so more land behind the current farmhouse, we started realizing that we would like to maybe someday build our own home back further on the farm. And then when we got the cattle, we realized that they were going to have to be pushed back because we do have neighbors up there, so they would be back here. And so we decided that we would build back further. And this wasn't the spot we were supposed to build our house. And at the time, we had a neighbor who was crop farming these fields. So we had never actually been up here to the top of this hill. We had no reason to ever come up here. And so he was harvesting crops, and he sent us a message one day and he said, if you're planning to build a house back here, you'd be crazy to not build it up on this hill. And he sent us a picture of the view. And so we kind of trekked back and stood up here, and it really takes your breath away. Like when you come up here in person and you stand here and you look out, and we see the Bay of Fundy from our house. So that is the body of water that you can see out there. It feeds into the Atlantic Ocean, but it is called the Bay of Fundy. And when you stand up here, you know, you really can't even portray it in a video or a photo. It really takes your breath away, and it is so beautiful. And we stood here and we thought, like, however we can make this work, we have to build our house back here. And that was 5 years ago. So 5 years ago is when I screenshot the inspo for the outside of the house. Was in 2020. You know, lots of stuff was happening in the world at the time, and it wasn't the right timing, and then it wasn't the right timing, and it wasn't the right timing. And so we picked away at it. So a few years back, we built the road that comes into the house that is here now. And we used a lot of the rock from our own property to build the road. And that was probably 3 years ago. And then we dug the hole for the house. And then we've been building the house and the barn for probably 2 years. So it's been a really long time coming, and we're really excited to move in. It feels so nice to sit in the house. It is such a beautiful and cozy and authentic space to me, because I kind of designed this not from trendy photos. And oftentimes when I was explaining things to my carpenters of like what I wanted to put in the house, I didn't really have any photos to show them because I kind of just pulled these things out of my head. I really didn't have a lot of, you know, we used Pinterest boards and I loved looking up inspiration, but a lot of our inspiration was like old cabins and old primitive homes, and that's just not something that people are really building around here. And so I feel very proud of the house that we put together. I was asked a lot, actually, and surprisingly enough, why, since we built our home from scratch, why didn't we build it bigger? And you know, this is what we were able to build. And also, we want to be in this house forever. And someday our children aren't obviously going to be living in this house with us. And I want it to still feel cozy, and I want it to feel big enough that they can bring their families back, but then also maintainable for us, you know, when we don't have our kids here anymore. So it's the perfect size for us. I feel so proud of it. I feel super proud of the design of the home. I feel super proud of all of the different quirks and characteristics that we put into the home. And I'm just really excited to spend the rest of my life here. So can't wait to film in this space for you and share more recipes as we move into our house, and share more aspects of our house and house tours and all of that great stuff, and our life here on the farm. And so this is sort of like the beginning of us sharing more of our farm life with you, because up until now I've kind of just shared mostly cooking and baking and sourdough. And so we're going to share more about our life, and hopefully you'll stay tuned in, and hopefully you'll like and subscribe to our channel and keep watching. And it just means so much to our family, and it supports us so much. So thank you so much for being here, and thanks for joining us on our mini kind of unfinished house tour. And I can't wait to answer any more of your questions that you might have about our house.